I need you to imagine something right now. Imagine waking up in a strange city. You don't remember how you got there. The buildings are familiar, but the streets are completely foreign. You walk through alleys that feel like dreams you've had before but can't fully remember. People speak in symbols, not words. You feel like you're inside someone else's memory, or maybe your own from another life. Well, that city is not fiction. That city exists. And you've been living in it your entire life without ever realizing. But Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious. And it's not just a philosophical idea. It's a psychological force that's shaping your thoughts, your emotions, and yes, even your success. Right now, without your permission, without your awareness. And if you ignore it, if you pretend it doesn't exist, it will block you over and over. No matter how hard you work, no matter how much you hustle, something will keep pulling you back, confusing you, draining you. That something is the part of you that belongs to everyone. And Jung's warning is clear. If you want to truly succeed, not just externally, but deeply, soulfully, you have to face it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Now we think of ourselves as individuals. That's what culture tells us, that your desires are yours. Your dreams are personal, your fears are private. But that's a lie, or at least a partial truth. Because beneath your personal story is another story, a deeper one that you didn't write but inherited, one that connects you to every human who has ever lived. And that story lives in the collective unconscious. It is the psychic inheritance of humanity filled with images, instincts, and patterns that have existed long before your birth. It doesn't speak in language. It speaks in archetypes. The hero, the shadow, the mother, the wise old man, the trickster. These are not characters in books. These are structures in your psyche. And they are influencing your life every single day. Let me ask you something you may have never considered. Why do you keep repeating the same self-sabotaging pattern? Why, when things are going well, do you feel the urge to destroy it? Why do you attract the same types of relationships, the same conflicts, even when you try to change? The answer may not be in your childhood. It may be in the archetypes you're unconsciously living out. You see, the collective unconscious doesn't care about your plans. It cares about wholeness. And if you're ignoring the parts of yourself that live in the collective, the archetypes you've rejected, the stories you've refused to face, it will pull you into them until you integrate them. Success that ignores the unconscious is temporary. It's fragile because it's not rooted in the full truth of who you are. Think about the people you've admired, and the legends, the ones who changed the game. You'll notice something strange about them. They weren't just skilled, they were archetypal. They embodied something larger than themselves. Steve Jobs wasn't just an entrepreneur, he was the magician, the visionary. Maya Angelou wasn't just a poet, she was the wise woman, the wounded healer. Elon Musk isn't just a CEO, he plays the trickster, the rebel, the destroyer of systems. These people tapped into the collective unconscious, whether they knew it or not. They became symbols, and that's why they're unforgettable. But here's the danger. If you tap into the collective unconscious without awareness, it can consume you. That's why Jung warned us. He said the unconscious is not just deep, it's powerful. And power without consciousness is destruction. That's why fame destroys people. That's why success can lead to breakdown if it's not integrated. Because when you awaken an archetypal energy in yourself, when you trigger the hero or the ruler or the savior, you're not just playing a role. You're activating a force. And that force demands humility. It demands shadow work, demands integration. So what do we do? How do we work with the collective unconscious instead of being ruled by it? First, we have to start paying attention to patterns. Not just in your life, but in your dreams, your fantasies, your obsessions. What kinds of stories move you? What characters do you always relate to? What nightmares haunt you? Those are clues. That's the unconscious trying to speak. You're not just watching movies, you're projecting your archetypes onto the screen. You're not just scrolling social media, you're seeing your own psyche reflected back at you. Next, we have to track the stories we're living. Most people are unconsciously stuck in myths they don't even know they're reenacting. Some are trapped in the orphan story, always feeling abandoned, always seeking validation. Others are caught in the martyr loop, sacrificing themselves endlessly and resenting everyone for it. But others are living the tyrant, controlling everything out of fear. These are not just personality quirks. They are archetypal scripts, and unless you become conscious of them, they will keep running your life. Jung said we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that means facing your shadow. That means owning the roles you've played and the ones you've denied. And here's the twist most people miss. Your success isn't just about talent, discipline, or strategy. It's about energy, psychic energy. Jung called it libido, not just sexual energy, but life force. And when your unconscious is filled with repressed archetypes, with unresolved shadow, with collective trauma that you haven't processed, you leak energy. You can't focus. You procrastinate. You self-sabotage. You burn out. Why? Because your unconscious is using your energy to suppress what you're not willing to face. But when you do the work, when you integrate the unconscious, you reclaim that energy, that you become magnetic, clear, focused, alive. That's the real secret to success. Not more hustle, more integration. So, let me ask you something. What archetype are you avoiding right now? Is it the warrior, the part of you that's fierce, direct, unapologetic? Is it the lover, the part of you that's vulnerable, intimate, open? Is it the sage, the part of you that knows, but stays silent? Is it the fool, the part of you that takes risks, breaks rules, dares to be different? Whatever it is, that's the part you need to bring back, because your wholeness depends on it. And your success, real success, comes from wholeness, not performance. This is why we can't afford to ignore the collective unconscious. It's not just a theory, it's the operating system behind your reality. And Jung's warning is more urgent now than ever. Because we live in a world that's forgotten the symbolic, the mythic, the collective. We've reduced everything to metrics, to brands, to content. But the soul doesn't care about content. It cares about meaning. And meaning comes from the collective well of symbols, archetypes, and shared psychic truth. If you want to create something that lasts, something that moves people, something that changes lives, you have to speak that language, the language of the soul. You have to create not just from your mind, but from your unconscious. You have to let the archetypes speak through you. That's how art is made. That's how revolutions begin. That's how legacies are born. So tonight, before you sleep, I want you to ask yourself, not with your mind, but with your heart, with your body. What story am I living? Whose myth am I trapped in? And what unconscious force is trying to break through right now? Sit with that. Let it come in dreams. Let it reveal itself through symbols. And when it does, don't run. Don't explain it away. Follow it. Track it. Integrate it. Because that is the path. That is the way. Carl Jung's warning is not fear-based, it's a call to depth, a call to awareness, a call to power. Not the power of domination, but the power of integration, and the power of becoming whole. And when you walk that path, you don't just succeed, you awaken. You remember. You become the kind of person who doesn't just chase success, but embodies it. Now we enter the heart of it, because you're still here, which means you're not just curious, you're ready. Ready to face the thing almost everyone runs from. Ready to answer the call that Carl Jung issued decades ago, a call that echoes louder now than ever before. You must become conscious of the collective unconscious. Why? Because if you don't, it will run your life and you will call it fate. You will think you're choosing your path, but in reality, you'll just be reacting to ancient patterns that have been shaping human behavior for thousands of years. The collective unconscious is not optional. It's not a theory you can agree or disagree with. It is the psychic ocean you are swimming in, whether you know how to navigate it or not. Let me explain something that can change your life forever if you really understand it. But the moment you step outside of your personal bubble and realize that the thoughts you're having, the fears that haunt you, the dreams that stir you, they're not entirely yours, you begin to access a new level of power. Most people live inside the illusion of separation. They think, this is my fear, or this is my dream, without realizing that those inner experiences are connected to something much bigger, older, and more universal. When you realize that your fears are not just personal but archetypal, you stop feeling ashamed of them. You begin to understand that they are part of a larger human journey. And that is the beginning of psychological liberation. Take the fear of being seen. So many people struggle with this. Public speaking, vulnerability, showing up online or in a relationship. But what if I told you that fear is not just yours? That it's rooted in the archetype of the exile, the one cast out from the tribe for being different. And that fear lives in the collective unconscious because, for millennia, exile meant death. So your nervous system isn't just reacting to today's situation, it's reacting to generations of survival instinct. When you realize that, you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking you're broken, and instead, you begin to work with the archetype. You begin to say, I see you, exile. I honor you. But I'm not in danger now. I can speak. I can be seen. I can survive. This is what it means to integrate the collective unconscious, to not just be aware of it, but to work with it, to form a relationship with it. Because here's the truth, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it doesn't go away. It takes over. It hijacks your decisions. It manifests as projection. You start seeing parts of yourself in others and judging them. You hate the arrogant person because you've repressed your own confidence. You envy the successful because you've denied your own ambition. You criticize the emotional because you buried your own vulnerability. Projection is the unconscious trying to show you what you've disowned. And until you reclaim those parts, they will control you from the shadows. Now, let's go even deeper. Think about your goals, your definition of success. Where did they come from? Did you really choose them? Or were they handed to you by the culture, by your family, by the collective expectations that live in the unconscious of your society? Jung said we must individuate, that is, become who we truly are, not who we were conditioned to be. And that means confronting the collective stories that have shaped us. The myth of endless productivity. The myth that our worth is tied to our output. The myth that vulnerability is weakness. These are not just cultural narratives. They are collective archetypes that dominate the modern psyche. And if you don't challenge them, you'll be enslaved by them. But here's the opportunity. The collective unconscious is not just a prison. It's a treasure chest. It doesn't just contain trauma, it contains power. Inside it are the archetypes of strength, resilience, wisdom, vision. When you do the work of integration, you don't just heal, you awaken. You start to embody the archetypes that serve your highest self. You become the creator, the one who channels energy into form. You become the warrior, the one who sets boundaries and protects the sacred. You become the magician, the one who transforms pain into purpose. These are not fantasies. They are psychic realities waiting to be activated in you. How do you activate them? You begin by observing. You watch your dreams. You track your projections. You notice recurring symbols, emotions, patterns. You ask, what part of me is being revealed here? You don't judge. You don't fix. You witness. You dialogue. You let the archetype speak. And slowly, the unconscious begins to trust you. It begins to reveal more. Your dreams become clearer. Your triggers become teachers. Your blocks become breakthroughs. And then something magical happens. You begin to live mythically. You begin to see your life as a hero's journey. You stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" And you start asking, what archetype am I being called to embody now? When a relationship ends, you don't collapse, you recognize the death and rebirth archetype. When you feel lost, you don't panic, you recognize the descent into the underworld, the sacred initiation that all heroes must face. When you feel afraid, you don't retreat, you recognize the call to adventure, the moment the soul asks you to grow. This shift from literal to symbolic, from personal to collective, is the most profound transformation a human can undergo. It changes how you experience everything. Pain becomes purpose. Failure becomes feedback. But fear becomes a doorway. And success, real success, becomes inevitable. But not because you control everything, but because you align with everything. You stop fighting the river and start navigating it. You stop resisting the archetypes and start embodying them. So let me ask you a question that only a few will dare to answer. What archetype is trying to emerge in you right now, but you're resisting it? Maybe it's the leader, and you're afraid of the responsibility. Maybe it's the lover, and you're afraid of the vulnerability. Maybe it's the destroyer, and you're afraid of what you'll have to let go of. Whatever it is, that archetype holds the key to your next evolution. And until you say yes to it, you'll keep circling the same loop, wondering why success keeps slipping through your fingers. Carl Jung didn't just warn us. He gifted us a path, a way to evolve, to expand, to become whole. Not by chasing more, but by going deeper, by facing the unconscious, by integrating the collective, and in doing so, accessing a level of intelligence, creativity, and power that most people will never touch. But you, if you've made it this far, you're not most people. You're one of the few who are ready. ready to stop living unconsciously, ready to stop reacting and start creating, ready to stop running and start remembering. Because the collective unconscious is not your enemy. It is your inheritance. And when you claim it, when you integrate it, when you embody it, you don't just succeed. You transcend. You become who you were always meant to be. Now we reach the final threshold, the place where understanding must become embodiment, where theory must become transformation. If you followed this journey through all its layers, then you already feel it. Something inside you has shifted. Something ancient has stirred. And maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to realize that this entire time, your struggles, your dreams, your fears, your desires, they weren't just yours. They were echoes, archetypal ripples from the depths of the collective unconscious, calling you back to yourself. Carl Jung's warning wasn't just psychological, it was spiritual, energetic, evolutionary. He saw what most people still can't see, that the greatest block to our success isn't laziness or lack of talent. It's unconsciousness. And specifically, the unconscious we share, the collective, that vast, mythic underworld where the soul speaks in symbols, and the ego has no power unless it learns to listen. So let's ask the real question here. What is success if it's not aligned with the soul? What is achievement if it's built on a foundation of fragmentation? What is power if it comes from disconnection? The world is full of people who have achieved everything they dreamed of and still feel empty. Why? Because they ignored the unconscious. They climbed the wrong mountain. They won the game, only to realize it was someone else's game to begin with. Jung warned us of this exact fate. He said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that avoidance is the true cost. Not just missed potential, but a life half-lived. A life that never becomes what it was meant to be. But what if you chose differently? What if you decided right now to face the unconscious not as a threat, but as a guide? What if you began to see your life not as a series of problems to solve, but as a myth to be lived? Imagine that. Imagine waking up every day not asking, what do I need to do? But what archetype is asking to move through me today? Imagine treating your anxiety as a message, not a malfunction. Your resistance as a threshold, not a flaw. Your triggers as invitations to retrieve the parts of you that were exiled long ago. That's not just healing. That's initiation. And this is where the collective unconscious becomes your ally. Because it doesn't just contain the wounds of humanity, it contains its wisdom. It holds the blueprint of your wholeness. The same way DNA carries the physical code of your body, the collective unconscious carries the psychic code of your soul. And when you activate it, when you align with the archetypes that are already inside you, you unlock energy you didn't know you had. You become more focused, more creative, more aligned. Because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're no longer at war with your own psyche. You're flowing with it, dancing with it, listening to it. Now, let me give you something practical, something most people will never do. But if you do it, everything will change. You create your archetypal map. Sit down and ask yourself, what archetypes am I currently embodying? Which ones have I rejected? Which ones am I afraid of? Which ones are trying to emerge? Write them down, create symbols for them, draw them, name them, dialogue with them. This is not fantasy. This is psychological alchemy. You are turning the chaos of the unconscious into the gold of awareness. And each time you do this, you reclaim psychic energy. You become less reactive, more intentional, less fragmented, more whole. But don't stop there. Step into ritual. Not in the religious sense, but in the symbolic sense. Every morning, light a candle not just for light, but as a symbol of your inner fire. Speak an intention not just for motivation, but as a declaration to your unconscious. When something painful happens, don't just numb it, honor it. Ask it what it wants to teach you. When something beautiful happens, don't just enjoy it, ritualize it. Mark it, anchor it. Because the unconscious responds to symbols more than words. It speaks the language of image, metaphor, rhythm. When you live symbolically, you make the invisible visible, but you make the unconscious conscious. And that is the deepest form of success. You see, the collective unconscious doesn't care about your resume. It doesn't care about your followers, your titles, your hustle. But it cares about your wholeness. It cares about your alignment. It cares about whether you are living the myth you were born to live or someone else's. And if you're not, it will disrupt you. It will block you. It will break down your plans. Not to punish you, but to reroute you back to yourself, back to the center, back to the path that only you can walk. So let me ask you one last question. And this one is not rhetorical. I want you to sit with it. Let it echo in your bones. Let it crack something open. What part of your unconscious is trying to wake you up right now, and will you answer the call? Will you stop suppressing the shadow and start listening to it? Will you stop chasing symbols outside of you and start embodying them? Will you stop trying to succeed in a system that wasn't built for your wholeness and start creating your own myth, your own path, your own definition of success? Because the truth is, the moment you stop ignoring the collective unconscious, you become dangerous in the best way possible. You become immune to manipulation because you've integrated your projections. You become resilient to failure because you understand its symbolic meaning. You become magnetic to the right opportunities because you're living in alignment with the deeper currents of life. You stop surviving and you start creating. You stop performing and you start embodying. You stop following and you start leading, not from ego, but from essence. This is what Carl Jung wanted for us. Not just to understand the unconscious, but to integrate it, and to reclaim our symbols, to live in alignment with the archetypes that move through every culture, every dream, every heartbeat. Because when you do that, you don't just transform yourself, you shift the collective. You become a vessel for something greater. You become a living bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, the personal and the collective, the human and the divine. And that is what true success looks like. So the next time you feel blocked, ask yourself, what part of me have I forgotten? What archetype have I abandoned? What unconscious force is trying to guide me? And then listen, trust, follow. Because the collective unconscious is not against you. It's been waiting for you. And now that you've remembered, it can finally begin.